How's it going, everyone? Data here, and today we will be asking the question, are the Vancouver Canucks legit? If you've been following the 2023-24 NHL season, you would know that the Vancouver Canucks right now are very much exceeding expectations. Through 20 games for the Canucks so far in this season, they hold a record of 13-6-1, giving them 27 points. That would put them on a pace of 53-27-4 and give them 110 points. Now, if you didn't know, the Vancouver Canucks have had a lot of misfortune over the last decade or so, just not even talking about their whole franchise's history, but over the last 9 years, the Canucks have only made the postseason once, and over those last 9 years, they finished 6th, 7th, 7th, 5th, 4th, 7th, 5th, 6th in their division, including last season finishing 6th and going 38-37-7. So the Canucks have been a team that, they've been waiting for the prime of their big pieces, Pettersson, Hughes, Demko, and that's a little bit of what they're getting this season. But it's not just their prospects who they've been waiting for finally arriving that's giving them success. There's a lot more that has gone into their success. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down what has gone into their success. Is this sustainable? When we look at the advanced analytics, what could the Canucks be in for? And just essentially, is this team for real? Is this team a possible contender? Could this be a postseason team that makes some noise in the 2024 postseason? That's what we will be breaking down today. So let's start by looking at the team itself in terms of the league standings. 4th best in the NHL, the Vancouver Canucks are right now. Now, the Canucks are also lucky, I would say, to be in what is currently the weakest division in the NHL. When I look at the Atlantic Division, I would say it's not just the top 3 teams that are fighting. Metropolitan Division, definitely not just the top 3 teams that are fighting. Central Division, I would say more than just the top 3 as well. But in the Pacific Division, I would say of all 4 divisions, this is the one where I'd be the most confident. I know it's far out, only about a quarter of the season has been played so far, but it's the division that I'm most confident in saying, I think the top 3 right now is the top 3. San Jose, they're just having a historically bad season. The Oilers and the Flames need to make major changes if they're going to have success this year, which they could. The Ducks and the Kraken, I don't think they're at that point just yet in their franchise, but the Kings, the Canucks, and the Golden Knights, I would say these are the 3 teams in whatever order to make it out of the Pacific Division. Vancouver is lucky this season that a lot of people didn't think it would be Vancouver. A lot of people thought that it would be at least Edmonton, if not Calgary as well, but they're at the bottom right now, which has given them a window to have this, this unexpected success. And to have 27 points at this point with that record on pace for 53 wins, which would be the second most in franchise history of over 5 decades, and 110 points would be their 3rd most in franchise history, there's something to be said about that. And if we think about who are the contributing pieces to this success, if we go from the team now look at the players themselves, we see Quinn Hughes, 31 points in 20 games. JT Miller, 30 points in 20 games. Elias Pettersson, 28 points. Brock Besser, even 13 goals and 22 points. Filip Hronek, almost at a point per game pace. That's even with Andrei Kuzmenko scoring way less than he was than last season. That's even with Connor Garland only scoring 2 goals and 5 points in 20 games. They're having great success. When you look at the shooting percentages, my goodness, Nils Höglander is scoring on 27.3% of his shots. Crazy stuff. So let's break it down the players a little bit more. If we look at the entire NHL scoring, the top 2 scorers in the league are from the Vancouver Canucks. Hughes with 31 points and JT Miller with 30 points. Then you even have Elias Pettersson in 6th. So 3 of the top 6 scorers in the NHL are coming from the Vancouver Canucks. Will this be how the league ends? Probably not, but at this point, that's incredible. What I really want to showcase would be the shooting percentages. So if we look at the minimum 15 games played, because I believe the Senators have played the least amount of games at 15, and if we sort by shooting percentage, and we take out the outliers here in Cogliano, I would say Justin Barron, honestly. If we look at just forwards who are playing, not just forwards, but just players who are playing more ice time, I would say JT Miller, obviously number 1 at 28.3. Matthew Nyes is right here at 27.8. But then look, Nils Höglander, who's only playing 10.5 minutes per night, is at 27.3%. Brock Besser, who has slowed down in recent years, is shooting at 25.5%. He's having a great resurgence this season. And if we just look beyond even the shooting percentages, as I said before, that's just the team scoring. Filip Hronek, who has a career high of what? I think like 34 points, is it? He's on pace to get something close to 80, if not in the 70s. Now, Andrei Kuzmenko, as I said, that's even with some players slowing down. Kuzmenko last year shot at 27.27%, I believe it was, and that was one of the, I think it was 14th best in NHL history, if I remember correctly. As I pulled up the numbers before, it's not just out of the top of my head, I'll be honest. So what I'm trying to say is, even if JT Miller's 28.9 shooting percentage, and even if Brock Besser's 25% shooting percentage, and even if Filip Hronek's point per game pace come down, I would say it would be expected that Kuzmenko's would be going up. A lot of the time, analysts will say, oh, well, this success isn't sustainable because their career numbers say this. This player's struggles are going to be turning around soon because usually he's good for this or that. Well, I think that kind of negates, outliers, and outliers exist. Yes, JT Miller is a career 14.8% shooter, but right now at 28.9%, I don't think he's going to stay at 28.9%, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ends the season still somewhere in the 20s. This could very well be a career year for JT Miller, who is just a couple seasons removed from 99 points. This year he's on pace for 123, I think? So I could definitely see him scoring over 100 points. It's hard to really say what's sustainable and what's not, because if you look at last season, if we look at the top NHL leaders of all time, actually, in a shooting percentage, Kuzmenko's 27.27% was 14th all-time in NHL history. And now if we look at including this year's numbers, JT Miller's 28.89% sits at 9th best all-time. Höglander even sits at 14th best all-time, and no one else in today's NHL is even close until 26th place. Teravainen and Joe Veleno both at 26.32. So do I think that a bunch of players from this season will end in the top 30 of all time? No, probably we'd be lucky to see maybe one or two players enter some of the highest shooting percentages in NHL history. But just to say that the Canucks currently have 3 players who are shooting at like some of the highest percentages in NHL history, even though some are full seasons and some are not, just to say, that's a very interesting point to see. Even though they'll likely go back down to earth over time, this success that they've had to start off the season will likely carry them, even when they do hit the rough spots later on in the year. Speaking of those rough spots, the Canucks are dealing with a lot of injuries right now. When you think about their blue line, their offense has been great, but when you think about the blue line, you have Hughes, you have Hronek who are just going off. Even Tyler Myers isn't doing too horribly, but you have Carson Soucy, who's out until at least the end of December. You have Guillaume Brisebois, who's out until the end of November. You have Mark Friedman, who's day-to-day. 3 guys who are like, 3 of your top 7 defensemen are out. That makes guys like Noah Juulsen have to draw into the lineup. And don't get me wrong, I love Noah Juulsen. I'm a Canadiens fan. I've always wished the best for him ever since we drafted him. But I don't know if I'd be as comfortable having Noah Juulsen on like my second pair defense, right? So the Canucks need to also be relying on their goaltending, which they have been. Thatcher Demko has been one of the top goaltenders in the NHL in that regard. As of November 18th, just a few days ago, he was at 11.7 goals saved above expected. That has a lot of value right there. So the Canucks' success is not just one player really going off and carrying the team. It's that the stars have aligned. The Stars have aligned. The Canucks have, 5 point per game plus players right now? The Stars have aligned in that way. They have great shooting percentages. They have fantastic goaltending. Their special teams have gone off as well. The Stars are aligning and coming together for the Canucks, even if it won't be able to be maintained longer term. This early success through the first quarter of the season should be enough to at least give them the confidence to carry it towards the end of the season. And should one player start struggling, that doesn't mean that the entire team will be struggling, nor does it mean that guys like Kuzmenko or Garland won't find their groove later on in the season. So I would say it's a very interesting team effort. It's not just one or two players who are determining the success of the team. Like if you look at the Oilers, no offense to the Oilers, but if you look at McDavid, who's kind of struggling compared to his usual McDavid numbers, the Oilers have really suffered a lot due to that. Now, of course, they have a lot of other issues, like the goaltending and the defense. I'd say that's even more of an issue than McDavid's scoring. But just to say, if McDavid were scoring at his 150-point pace, I'm sure the Oilers would be having more success right now. But again, it's not just McDavid, it's not just the scoring. The Oilers have huge other issues going on. But just looking at this graphic here, special teams goals for percentage. So if you look at the power play and the penalty kill goals for, the Canucks have 65% of their goals coming from the special teams. So 35% of their goals are coming from even strength. long term, definitely not sustainable. You need to be scoring more even strength. So the Canucks have things to work on. Over the last week or so, they have come back down to earth over time. If you look at their entire goal differential above expected, it was 29.2, or excuse me, it was 33.7 on November 12th, but then a week later on November 19th, it was 29.2. So that has been changed. We'll get into those numbers in a moment. What I really want to look at first before we go deeper into the other numbers would be the cumulative PDO. A team's PDO is essentially their puck luck. It's their 5-on-5 shooting percentage, so the Miller, the Höglander, the Besser, plus the team's save percentage as well. You're thinking Demko, DeSmith, whoever else. So if we take that and we put it into a metric here, the league average is 1.000, and if we compare the Canucks to other historically high early season PDO teams, we can see that they would rank through 20 games right here. The 15-16 New York Rangers would be the only team higher in recent history. The Canucks, although they've gone downhill big time over the last 5, 6, 7 games or so, it was to be expected, and it's still higher than the league average. What's interesting is that if you look at where these other teams ended up, if you look at the 15-16 Rangers, the 16-17 Canadiens, all as you can see on the legend right here, all these teams ended, well, the 14-15 Penguins are pretty much at the average here, but all these other teams here finished above the league average. Where did they end up going? Well, starting from the bottom and going to the top, the 14-15 Penguins, first round exit. The 16-17 Canadiens, first round exit. The 10-11 Stars missed the postseason despite winning 42 games. The 16-17 Blackhawks, first round exit. The 18-19 Islanders, second round exit. And the 15-16 Rangers, first round exit. So I think there is something to be said that if you use up, it's not like you have a bank of luck, but if you use up all your early success at the beginning of the season and you start to fizzle out over the long run because you've been relying so much on your special teams and your special teams isn't clicking, you've been relying so much on one guy shooting at 30% and he's not shooting at 30%. If you rely totally on that, by the time you get to the postseason, yes, you will definitely suffer. I don't mean to compare the 23-24 Canucks to all these teams. All these teams had different things going on. They had different great squads. I'm not going to go into each one and break it all down, but I do think that the Canucks are unique. They're not just a team that's having random lucky success out of nowhere. It's not like, no offense to the Anaheim Ducks, it's not like a Frank Vetrano coming out of nowhere and scoring a lot of goals and you're hoping, let's keep that offense up. You're actually seeing stars who are coming out, hitting their potentials, playing at their best. And although that best probably won't be sustainable over the entire season, they could still very well have career type seasons. Even if Quinn Hughes won't hit 120 plus points, he could still do something like 90, 100, who knows. Even if Brock Besser doesn't score like 53 goals that he's currently on pace for, he could still have a wild resurgent 35, 40 goal season. That would be enough for the Canucks to say, I think we are legit. So going back into the metrics here, if we look at now the goals scored above expected, definitely the Canucks have been scoring above what they have been expected to do at 19.7 in all situations. That is a pretty large number when you look at the rest of the league. Like from 18th to 6th or 7th, you have the same difference between first and second. So the Canucks are definitely above by quite a large amount. But just because they're scoring above what they're expected to do and they're allowing less goals than they're expected to allow, that doesn't mean it's all luck. That doesn't mean it's all going to fall apart over time. Teams by the end of the season will end in the positive. Not every team comes back down to zero according to expectations. If the entire league and every sport was according to expectations, there were, what would sports be, right? They're not played on paper. It's not played in theory. It's played on the ice. So the Canucks could very well maintain these positive numbers, even though they'll come down. As we saw over here, it came down from 33.7 down to 29.2 over the course of a week, which we'll break down in a moment. It will come back down to earth a little bit, but that doesn't mean that it can't stay at the top above what people would expect it to be. Why can't Brock Besser score 40 plus goals? And even if he doesn't, then Kuzmenko or Garland maybe picks up the pace. So I don't think it's to say that, it's coming down, enjoy it while you can, because it's coming back down to zero soon enough. Look at all these teams that are around that mid-range. I think they could stay towards the top 5 of the league, just that the number itself will come down comparatively as the rest of the league evens out as well. So 19.7 goals scored above expected and 9.5 goals saved above expected as well as of November 19th. So that does tempt many people to say that they are one of the luckier teams in the league. That's why we're looking at them having such high PDO, the puck luck, the shooting percentage and save percentage. Yes, but I think that they are a unique case. It's not going to be just a few players. I do think that this team is legit in terms of they could make it as one of the top teams in the Pacific, and they could actually have a bit of a run in the postseason. And we look at, and now we looked at Thatcher Demko, but then we could just look at goal differential above expected. This is where they have the largest division with the rest of the league. This division was 33.7 to 20. So it was about 10 goals difference on November 12th, and it's still about 10 goals difference on November 19th, but all the numbers are coming down comparatively a little bit more for these higher performing teams. But just to say, from like negative 10 goals to 0 goals, you have like from 27th place to like 14th place. Then from 0 to 10, it's something like 14th place to 5th place. But from first to second, there's a 10 goal division. So yes, even though I'm pumping up all these guys, I do think that Besser, Höglander, even a little JT Miller, their goal scoring will dip. But the team itself, I think their success is sustainable, and I do see this team being able to win 45 plus-ish games. When I think about other teams that have had success like this in recent history that weren't listed in that PDO meter, I do think about, like, let's say the 2016-17 Flyers. That team had a 10-game winning streak in like the month of, from like November to December, right? A lot of people thought that the Flyers were going to have a crazy year. They're on that 10-game winning streak. There you go. And they ended up missing the postseason. So it's very hard to predict all of these things, but when we come back to the main question, are the Vancouver Canucks legit? Can they be contenders to come out of the Western Conference? I do think that is a possibility. When I think about well-rounded teams who have more sustainability potential, I do think of the Vegases and the Colorados of the world, but Vancouver could carve themselves a place in that Western Conference conversation. And although the metrics suggest that they're playing above what they should be doing, and although history suggests that teams such as the Canucks would fizzle out over time, I do think that's a different story for Vancouver this year. I do think that they have the offense, and I do think that they have the goaltending. It's their defensive depth, maybe even a little bit of their scoring depth, as well as a little bit of current injuries and potential future injuries that could be what throws a wrench in their current plans. But regardless of what happens, the Vancouver Canucks, after so much pain for so long, after winning, 38 games, 40 games, 23 games, 36 games, 35 games, tough years, I definitely see this as a 45-plus win season. I don't know if they'll get to 50, but I do think they're a postseason team. I do think they make it out of the Pacific Division, and I do think that some players like JT Miller, I think players like even Quinn Hughes, have career years to carry this team. So are the Vancouver Canucks legit? I think so. It's crazy to say after all the bad luck they've had, but I think the stars are coming together. They're aligning for Vancouver. And this season, even if I don't think that they're Stanley Cup contenders, I do think that they're a legit team in the NHL to be taken seriously, and hopefully, it'll be used as a building block headed into next season and the future years. It will be tough with the OEL buyout and the money cap restrictions that Vancouver will be dealing with, extensions for Hronek and Kuzmenko. So, if I'm the Canucks, I'm probably going a little bit, maybe not all in, but I'm definitely trying to use this season, but I'm definitely trying to go on a run this season if I'm Vancouver management. The OEL buyout of like $143K becomes over $2 million next year and over $4.5 million the year after. All those extensions that have to be paid out as well. Yeah, so even if you're not going to be winning the Stanley Cup, I would say if you're Vancouver, you gotta try and make a run for it. Seasons like this do not always come along, even though the numbers will, go up and down and probably go back to what we've seen historically around this range as opposed to being up here in their puck luck. I think that this is a season that they have to take advantage of, not just because of their player performances, but because of the extensions that are coming in within the next few seasons, especially next year, and the big OEL buyout that's going to go from costing you $143,000 to over $2 million to over $4.5 million over the next year and 2 years respectively. So that's what I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, on the Vancouver Canucks. Are they legit? I think so. Is it crazy to say that? It definitely feels like it. So let me know your thoughts. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? What are the Canucks missing? Where do you think they may have success or just end up faltering? Let me know all your thoughts down here on YouTube. I'd love to hear more from you. Personally, I cannot wait to see how the 2023-24 season wraps up for the Canucks. And if you are as well, be sure to leave a like. And of course, consider subscribing, because I think if you're a Canucks fan, you're going to love this. We're currently doing our NHL 24 franchise mode series with the Vancouver Canucks here on the channel. So if you have suggestions for the Canucks that the real life Vancouver management won't listen to, bring them here. We'd love to hear them. We're currently in 2024-25 at time of upload in our series, but even if you're watching after the fact, the series is likely still going. We'd love to have you join in as an assistant general manager on the team. We're a fantastic and strong community, and it'll be that much better with you as a part of it, especially if you're a Canucks fan. So thank you once again for taking the time to watch. Looking forward to reading all your thoughts down here on YouTube, and hopefully also looking forward to seeing you join us in Vancouver for our franchise mode series.